getting into the space of social organization called anarchism, and the profound socialization. To me, what's been the most interesting part of it has been what's almost harder in terms of getting people to self-govern is that it's just so unnatural. So I'll just use one or two examples. At the first General Assembly, where there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, that was the one thing I facilitated, and then I ended up doing other things. And I just facilitated, and I just actually didn't say a word of what I thought, and I was very in background facilitation, and afterward, about 80 people ran up to me and basically thought I ran the entire encampment, and I had requests for everything, and I was just like, I didn't understand. I was like, I don't know, I really don't understand this. And it took me 3 or 4 weeks after then, all these things emerged about there's a conspiracy of people behind the scenes running it. They didn't even know who I was almost all anarchist facilitating, but nobody knew that because nobody knows what an anarchist is. What they'd never seen one, or most of the anarchists really don't look like anarchists. And they weren't telling anyone they were anarchists. But it was just this vague conspiracy, and I really finally realized that people had never seen a facilitator before, never been a facilitated meeting. They didn't even understand what the role was, so they were confused. If someone stands up in front of a crowd, they think they must, at a political space, they must have power, which is exactly why I believe in democracy, to destabilize that. But even though when they understood what the role of facilitator was, the deep, deep way we're socialized to respect authority and not question authority and look to authority, even when people understood what a facilitator's role is, they still couldn't get over the fact that facilitators must have some secret role behind the scenes. And even more so was really mind-boggling to me, the number of people that kept coming up and saying, I'm a musician, it'd be really cool if I could play some music. Can you tell me how, could you set that up for me? I don't know what. And I was like, just do it. And they would go, huh? just do it. But you can't just say that to them. Just do it is a funny thing when no one's been given the chance in their life to just do it. But then you kind of just let people do it and they figure it out. So it was actually a beautiful space letting people figure it out themselves, but the socialization part was so intense. But now, 3 months into it, it's completely the opposite. When the General Assembly, which has gotten down to just kind of the core of liberals, who actually still seem pretty excited about the elections and nation states, but they will defend that General Assembly, this is where we make decisions. So there's a proposal that someone was coming in with something that was to make it, non-directly democratic. And the people that were the most angry, all of a sudden that was the moment I was like, actually this works more than anything, is the people that stood up to the liberals and they're like, we are not going back to the old days of Congress and top-down, blah, blah, blah. Even though I know for damn well these people are going to vote in the election. And the person a couple weeks ago who brought a proposal and supported it more than anyone else, that we shouldn't be a political party, we shouldn't be part of electoral politics, we should have nothing to do with the upcoming election, is someone from Occupy who's decided to run for Congress because he's been so politicized by this moment. I don't know how he reconciles that in his head, but he's like, Occupy is social movement, it's completely distinct, it has power, it's us together. And he's been very good, honestly, I have to say. He drives me crazy. He's been very good about keeping the two really separate. And so that's, in 4 months, pretty phenomenal that we can get people that far. But as an anarchist, this would be interesting to talk about. What does it mean we have spaces where we have anarchism as a social system that starts changing how people act, how people think, what they value? They start getting these power relationships. You don't even need anarchists. In fact, most anarchists might get annoyed and leave. What does that mean for anarchism in terms of how we actually think it's going to work? How does reciprocity look? How does economics look? How does politics look? Frances Fox Gibbon came to Occupy Philly and said such a thing that struck me ever since. She said, what's happening in these spaces, I completely agree, it's not a protest. She goes, we're creating the new society, and what we're doing is an experiment in a moral economy. Everything we're doing is about how we would make things and produce things and share things and distribute things. And I don't think I'm not that economistic, but I think she's right on a large scale. Like, it really struck me that everyone was like, oh, I'm not going to my job. I'm doing this for free and being here. But we were doing everything we would actually do to make the society, this our work, without getting paid. It wasn't like when people keep saying, get a job. I'm like, this is the hardest thing we have ever done, is I'm running a small city. And it was really, you know that we're here in the encampment. We were city managers suddenly overnight. All of us running full municipal setups. Everything you need in the city. It's hard work. Harder than any work I do for money. And because there's no end to it. And it was a mess. But so there's this way in which people still psychologically need to start thinking that way. And that's going to take profound socialization. And it's going to challenge anarchy. That's really what I want to come to. What does it look like to have a moral economy? What would it look like to go beyond capitalism? And I think our answers have been so inadequate. They've been these like, mutual aid, cooperation, we'll have a house meeting, somebody doesn't do the dishes and work it out. That's great. about that? Because this, and I really want to take that seriously now because this is the moment when we actually could start thinking about it as a social system. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about with anarchism and Occupy, besides those three things, is the third one is anarchists, us, who are anarchists, who are in this space, and how we have acted. And we could probably talk about this all night because there's a whole range of the ways people act. I've never seen, to some degree, anarchists leap in so quickly because we are the technocrats of, I realize how good we are so skilled at facilitating and, mediating and making indie media and doing medics and all the other things. So at least where I was and a lot of the other occupiers, I thought anarchists just swooped in and just did everything we do, and we are so good at it. It's like finally all the skills we've been working on for years. There's a chance for us to shine. And it really was. It was funny, Billy, really there were 400 or 500 anarchists, and we all were just working for about a week, and suddenly there was a decision at the General Assembly, and we were all working so hard. We just jumped in and did. I really felt like we were all bureaucrats. We jumped in, or not bureaucrats, we were the workers. We knew how to do everything. So we all jumped in. We're all the core of all the working groups doing all the work, and none of us were going to the General Assemblies because we were too busy. And then there was a General Assembly where we'd gone and taken the square without a permit. 1,000 people who didn't know each other, who'd never thought about disobeying the law probably, and they were all like, yeah, we don't need a permit. And then 5 days later, suddenly they're like, wow, we're in the square, we should get a permit. And because the police and the mayor told us to, and which they were. And so here we all, the anarchists are working, and there's a General Assembly, and everyone votes to get a permit with the police standing next to us in our General Assembly. And all of us anarchists were like, what the hell? So all of us went to a park, and then we're suddenly like, wow, there's a lot of us here. And we hadn't actually even noticed that. And we're all like, why did you come? And it was all the same reason, because we're really good at doing this self-organizing stuff. And so we just jumped in. But what we didn't do was jump in as people who took seriously that we're part of this community. And I really feel like it's been an interesting tension with anarchists is we're like, well, we have our posse and crew. And we're not, there's a lot of ways anarchists talk from a subculture, which is really important to have subcultures, like to test yourselves out. But that mentality is this funny way in which, after that, we did this that night in the park. We were all really mad and screaming and getting upset about those idiots down there that had just go up to get a permit, and we're calling I almost punched someone because they were calling the police to shut down the Occupy. Thought we hadn't gotten a permit and we were illegal, and so I was just like, but you're an occupier, why are you calling the police? I didn't almost punch them, but I definitely was very upset. Do not call the police. But we were all anarchists, we were all getting really upset, and then someone just said, this is our fault. We could have spoken at the General Assembly. We could be, and so after that we did. We're like, this is ridiculous. But I think there's a way in which we're always us and them or the community, and so that's one thing that I want to brag about, how we participate. But I also think how our assumptions and our language, the way we do politics completely doesn't work in a lot of ways. It doesn't translate, people don't get it, and we haven't gotten how to translate it yet. So there's been this really disjuncture there too. And yeah, okay, I'm running long talking, so I'm just gonna cut this part off. But there's a whole bunch of ways that'd be interesting to look at how we have not known what to do in this moment. And so for me, it's been this really humbling experience, but I think anarchists haven't known what to do. And so in a lot of places, I think the not knowing what to do means going back to the things we know what to do well. So we'll open an info shop, or in Philly, what's happened is pretty much all the anarchists have gone back to the projects they were doing before, because there's a lot of really cool anarchist projects in Philly, which is why we're still there. And it's good. There's prison abolition, and that's good work to be doing. Or there's running an anarchist bookstore, and that's a good project. Or there's all these projects. But it's people have just gone back, and they have a place to go. And the people in the space of Occupy who come there, who've discovered what it feels like to be inside a space that's anarchistic, in a space that's anarchy, and in a space that's functioning as anarchism, it's the most mind-blowing experience for them. So for them, one guy who's in his 70s at one point after the encampment, he said, you don't understand how it feels. He goes, when I go home at night, it's like exile. He goes, we have to start, why don't we create houses where we all live together, collectives? And everyone in Philly who's an anarchist started laughing because there's probably 400 anarchist collective houses in Philly. And we're like, just Philly. But it really was striking. We realized people don't have anywhere to go back to. And as anarchists, we do. We have our whole anarchist world that we created. And it's kind of like Occupy, but it's a lot more comfortable. And so, and you get better food. And so it was this way in which our inability to deal with has been a problem as an anarchist, but yet we're completely been essential to